Right, for the Bendigo Harness Racing Club and the Oxley Feed Mills Veteran Drivers Race, going to be around very, very quickly. I think it's the 24th of November. Debra Wicks-Moss joins me. Hello, Debra.
Hi, how are you?
Back again. You were, I think you come off the bench last year. Was it your first drive in the series last year?
No, it was my second.
Second one, was it?
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
How did you enjoy the experience?
Oh, I love it. It's absolutely awesome to be standing there alongside those men. It's quite intimidating, actually. And I remember last year when the lass read out about all their achievements, I thought, geez, what am I doing here? But, yeah, it's just lovely.
Oh, you definitely belong. I think, there's so many criteria about it. One of, unfortunately, is an age limit, but there is, that part of it is also a positive. I mean, we do get older, but it's what it's about. It's actually to celebrate, people's careers and, legends of our industry. It once was called the legends, but unfortunately we're not allowed to call it that. But some veteran drivers who have done so much for the industry.
Yeah, it is, it's amazing. And just because you're getting older doesn't mean you can't still contribute. And when you've been in the industry as long as people like myself, male or female, it's great to be acknowledged. It really is. I'm going to say your claim to fame, you've driven, how many winners have you driven actually over this journey? I don't know, it's in the hundreds. Yeah, because before I was driving winners before they kept records. So yeah, it's well in the three figures. I estimate, 300-400. I'm not sure. Don't know.
You came up in a generation where lady drivers weren't accepted. I suppose I can say that it wasn't. It was taboo to have lady drivers. There were lady driver races, and there were so many trailblazers, if you like, in the industry. It must have been a different time to, I suppose, be a driver and be a part of an industry that you love, but almost get kicked to the curb as well. Yeah,
well, when I first started, I was 16, and my mother and father started the Granville Pony Club, and I met the Monday family there. And we became good friends, and they had harness racing horses, and that's how I got interested. So by the time I was 17, I had a trainer's licence, not a driver's licence, and I was training horses. And you just accepted the fact in those days that you couldn't drive, you weren't allowed to. But then as time wore on and I got into my 20s, there started to be a push from the women to be allowed to drive, because it was happening that the anti-discrimination laws were going to be introduced. And so the wonderful Margaret Davies and Margaret Frost started the New South Wales Reins Women's Association, and then other women in other states started the Reins Women's Associations. So we initially pushed for Reins Women's races at the Gymkhanas. We didn't have trials in those days, they were Gymkhanas. And that's how we started. And we used to go to all the Fairfield, Liverpool, Bankstown, and they'd run a ladies' race for us. And then at the shows, they'd run a ladies' race for us and things like that. But then in 1977, Judge Alf Gorham took over in New South Wales, and he told the powers that be that if they didn't license the women, that we would just take them to court and we would win, because the anti-discrimination laws were clear that we could not be discriminated against because of our gender. And that's how we got our licences.
So just one part of that, I might be wrong here, so that was actually just to be able to drive in TAB races. It would have been another struggle to be able to drive against the men, or was it all in the one struggle? All in the one struggle to drive against the men.
There was initially a push to have Reins Women's races only. And I was at Bulli, the opening of the new Bulli track in January 1977, and Judge Alf Gorham was there. And Bill Ellis took us down and introduced myself, a lass called Karen Bull, and another lass called Cheryl Winner, down and introduced us to Judge Alf Gorham. And we had the opportunity to have a conversation with him, and he was of the opinion that if we were going to drive, we went straight in and drove against the men. And we agreed with that. Some of the women didn't. We were young in those days, and we didn't have husbands to please and things like that, and other criteria to please. So we were all macho and keen to get on and drive against the men. So he agreed with us. So New South Wales went down the path of allowing women to become licensed to drive against the men straight up. In the other states, the girls drove against themselves for the first 12 months. Victoria had no problems in that regard, I don't think, but I know Queensland and South Australia had terrible problems. The men refused to drive against the women, or threatened to refuse to drive against the women in Queensland and South Australia, so they had a real battle. But they eventually got it all sorted and got there, and how wrong they've been proved, all those naysayers.
Well, there's a lady, and her name will come up in a minute as well, but Deborah Quinlan, she was saying the first time she drove, there was only one person actually objected, and I won't mention that gentleman's name, but yeah, she was sort of, like she said, it was a very different experience, and she done what you done. You were the first lady driver to win a race against the men. You weren't the first lady driver to win a race because there was these lady drivers races, but against the men in a TAB race, that was you were the first one. Incidentally, at Hawkesbury of all places, a thoroughbred track.
Yeah, well, I trained at Hawkesbury. Yeah. I originally started training at Bankstown. I trained at Fairfield for a while because I had a trainer's licence from the time I was 17, and I was 23 by the time we were licensed to drive. Yeah, and I was training at Hawkesbury, yeah, so that was really a very stressful night that night because Darwin Boy was a horse with a ton of ability, but he was a big beast of a horse. He went in a 64.5-inch hobble, and I weighed 45 kilos in those days. But I worked him all the time, drove him at the unofficial trials at Bankstown and things like that, so I knew him inside out. But he had his quirks. And at Hawkesbury that night, I thought he could win. And when I got to the races, there was cameras, newspaper, people and everything there. And I was so nervous. Like here I am, 23, first drive in a race. No woman had drove a winner. And
hang on, well, you didn't tell me that part. So that was actually your first drive. You told me you were the first to do it, but that was actually your first TAB race drive.
My first official race drive, yes. And here I am being interviewed before the race and things like that. And I remember saying to his owner, Jim Everston, I said to my mum and dad, actually, I said, if he's favourite, for God's sake, don't tell me, because if I get beat, they'll throw tin cans at me. Anyway, I'm walking around the marshalling yard, ready to go out on the track, and his owner, Jim Everston, comes running up to me. He's 6-4, and they're backing him like he can't get beaten. Well, I thought, my God. And so anyway, I went out, and it was a standing start, and he was a bit of a rogue from the stand, and he bubbled a couple of strides and then hit him and we went straight to the front and we won. So, yeah, so.
Right, I have a couple of questions. We should have grabbed some seats because this could go for a while. But were you the only lady driver? Was that the first time a lady was allowed to drive in a race? That's when it got passed. So, and that was the first race. Was there other lady drivers on that night?
Other ladies drivers had driven prior. Margaret Davies was the first woman to drive against the men. She had 2 drives at Nowra, a non-tab meeting, and she ran a second and a third.
Yeah.
I think it was 3 days after I drove that winner, Jean Bishop come out and won. And I can't memory serves me where she won, but I know she won after that. But we were a real novelty, though, still, because there was one woman at the entire meeting driving, not like it is today.
No, and I remember Debbie Quinlan was the other lady, and she did the same thing here in Victoria. From memory, I'm going to say it was Warrigal, but she might correct me. It actually might have been Traralgon, which was the next place, which they don't race at anymore anyway. But Debbie she'll correct me and give me a foot up the backside because I did do an interview. But, some of the challenges that you had back then, where did you get changed? And things along those lines, like there was nothing, it was like pure trailblazing times.
In the public toilets.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember being at Penrith one night. It was a ringing wet night.
It's always
pouring rain. Yeah, pouring rain. And Anne Tracy, or Anne Hancock as she was later, she had a drive. And she come in covered in mud and she said, stuff this. And she went up to the secretary's office and she knocked on the door. She said, you clean the men's driver's room out. I want a shower. And she made them go in and get all the men out of the driver's room so she could have a shower. I just applauded her. I thought it was awesome.
And that would have been what you had to challenge, some of the challenges you had back in that day.
Yeah, like we had nowhere to get changed or anything like that. I did it was well into the 80s. I actually threatened with going to the anti-discrimination boards because we still didn't have change rooms. Yeah. Like you'd go to Penrith and beautiful big change room for the men and things like that, nothing for the women. And I threatened to take them to the anti-discrimination board and they said pick a club, so I had to pick Penrith, which I didn't want to do because they were a good club. But we did get our change room. They converted 2 toilets down at the drivers out of the public near the stabling area and turned it into a lady driver's room, a shower and 1 toilet, and that was the lady driver's room.
You must love now when we could pick up a form guide today and it doesn't matter, there could be 6 or 7 ladies in a race. In one race, they might be driving in the whole card, those same ladies. And what's happened, the facilities, there's never... We accept ladies in the races. You must really love that part of it now.
I do. I get such a big thrill. Every time a woman wins a race, it doesn't matter. And I suppose I'm prejudiced, but I come from an era where women were told that no one would bet on you. you couldn't do it because you weren't strong enough, and you're just not up to it. And it's just fantasy stuff now, isn't it? Like, when you see women like Karen and Jodie and all the other lasses, Kate Gath, and go on the girls.
Isn't that the sad part, though? You can forget the names. Like, you've rattled off half a dozen. You're going to have forgotten someone. That's the greatest part about it. It's not like there is 5. There is so many.
Look at the girls in Queensland, like what Natalie Rasmussen's done in the past and things like that. And the girls up there now, the way they drive. And the girls here, like Jackie Barker and things like that now, that are just driving winners left, right. And instead of Lisa Miles, you could go on and on and on and on and on forever, and still miss 20 or 30 great drivers.
And for any of those ones that Debra has missed, we are going to apologise, because this, as always, is a little bit unrehearsed. Debra, I could talk to you forever. What's been your greatest win? I'll give you 2 seconds to think about that. But what was it? Was it Darwin Lad? Was it that first win? Would you say that was your greatest win, or is it another one?
That has to be my biggest achievement in harness racing. Like, I'm only a very little person. I don't come from a harness racing background. Neither Greg nor I had parents who were involved. We got ourselves involved. That Darwin boy will never be beaten so far as I'm concerned. My biggest achievement, I think, was not even winning the race, but was qualifying Victory Lord for the Christy will kill me for this because I can't remember the year, 1990, I think it was, Inter Dominion Grand Final at Harold Park. He was the rank outsider at the field at 300 to 1.
But you didn't care?
No, didn't care. We had a drive in an Inter Dominion, and he ran 4th in his first round of heats. And that was great, big thrill. And then they started on me, Greg and the family and everything. You've got to run the first 5 in the next round of heats. You've got to, because then you'll make the final. I went into the second round of heats a nervous wreck. And he ran 5th and made the final. And I remember standing there waiting to go out for the final, and Wayne Innes come up to me and said, what's it feel like, Deb, driving an Inter-Dominion final? I said, it feels great. All the pressure's off. I can't win. I can't run a place. I'm just going to have fun. And he drew the outside of the front row and he ran 10th. But it was just a great experience. And
that's what harness racing is, and it's what we want people to get to the Oxley, as I said, Oxley Feed Mills at Bendigo veteran drivers race. It should be legends, but anyway, I'll get into trouble for saying it twice. But the veteran drivers race, I think it is going to be great. Must be great. You say about lining up, and one of the things they do so well at Bendigo, they will have everyone lined up, and I'm going to forget names, but I know there's Brian Gaff, Graham Whittle. I'm going to get Graham's name out because I quite often forget his name. Mark Hayes, Jimmy O'Sullivan, Ginger Gleeson, John Justice for his first time this year. Lance won't be competing. He's not back. There is definitely a couple of other guys who I have forgotten.
Yeah,
but
I think Jeff Webster was one.
Jeff Webster, yes, sorry, he is back too. Yeah. There's definitely someone at the top of the list. No, you're at the top of the list. No, it's okay. I know. I can see the list in my head. But to line up there, but as you said, Kirsten Graham, talk through, do your bio, but to line up against so many people that are stalwarts of our industry.
It is just wonderful. And like I said, I was standing there listening to their bios and the races they won. David Aitken was another one that was last year.
He's coming back too.
Yeah, okay. And what those men have achieved, it's frightening. Yeah. It's unbelievable to think that handful of men have achieved the ultimate in the industry. And then when I was lucky enough to win on the wonderful Stars Down Under, and a lovely horse, beautiful horse, and after the line, Brian Gath congratulated me, and that was just really made my heart sing. I thought it was so wonderful.
And he is a legend of our sport, and we can say, because he is a living legend, like he's been immortalised in that. Brian Gaff drove a winner again the other day, the Evergreen. I don't think he knows how old he is, a 2-year-old trotter. He got it around. He doesn't worry, but he loves it. He looks forward to it. But at the same time, if you beat him, he's more than happy. Which, if it was another race just at Ballarat and you beat him, he's not as happy about those things.
Especially if you might have had something on.
Exactly. Debra, thank you. Look forward to catching you there. I will be there on the night, so I'll definitely look forward to catching you there. But we want to make sure as many people know that it is on the 24th of November, Oxley Feed Mills. It is on a Friday night at Bendigo. Get there. There's going to be some great racing. But the Oxley Feed Mills veteran drivers race, I am going to be in trouble, but I don't care. The veteran drivers race will be there, and there'll be a celebration of the people's careers, and it'll be great. And it's going to be great to see John Justice. I'm going to reiterate that a couple of times because I don't think he would be that happy about being in that class, but I think it's going to be great to see him driving in there, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Terrific. Thank you very much, and I hope everybody comes along and gives us some support, and may the best woman win.
Absolutely. The only one, but that's okay. Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks.